Hey there, welcome into Fantasy Baseball today on Tuesday, June 27th. Frank Stampfl joined by Scotty Dubs, Scott White. Today on the show, Reid Detmers and Dylan Cease are both back on track. We're going to fire up the drop-o-meter for a bunch of hitters that have slowed down in the month of June, Team Name Tuesday, and much more. Before we get started, please like this video and subscribe on YouTube if you haven't already. And if you're listening on the audio side, download, follow, and leave a 5-star rating on Apple or Spotify. Let's jump in.
Wow! Hey now! Hey now! Hey now!
Scott, everything feels brand new. We're good to go. The voice is back. You have you have a new cordy plug thing in your
I know.
Let's go.
New cord. Who dis? You can hear me.
That we can. All right, Scotty, you're up. Who do you want to highlight first?
All right. Well, let's go straight for the breadstick here with Reid Detmers, who was sensational. He had his best start of the season last time, and then he just one-upped it again with his new best start of the season here against the White Sox. 2 hit them over 7 innings. Did allow a run, but he struck out 10, and he had 17 swinging strikes on 105 pitches. The other thing, okay, so a few things that these last two starts have in common. Both were 7 innings, and there were his only 2 starts of that length all season. And both he allowed just 2 hits over those 7 innings. And in both, his average slider velocity was down about 2 miles per hour. So I hope Reid Detmers has cracked the code here, because he's been pretty frustrating up to this point. And it's been kind of a whole saga, because of course he was a trendy sleeper pick coming into the year, first of all, because of the way his slider performed down the stretch last season when it gained a bunch of velocity. Remember, he got sent down in the minors midseason, came back, it was up like, I think 3 or 4 miles per hour on average. So it was up, and it made him look amazing. And okay, this is the key. Throw that slider harder, baby. But then it went up more in spring training, and that just seemed to get everyone more excited about Reid Detmers and kind of priced him out of my range, frankly, in most leagues. So we thought, okay, if more velocity on the slider is good, then even more is even better, right? But apparently that's not the case. Apparently he needs to find that sweet spot with the slider velocity, and hopefully he's found it now. And for what it's worth, what it has dropped to in these last 2 starts is pretty much in line with where it was after he returned from the minors last year and looked the best he ever has. So a lot rides on Reid Detmers' slider velocity, apparently, is what I'm saying. And if he can make this stick, if it's not something that is just going to be a headache constantly throughout his career, trying to zero in on getting this perfect slider, which is possible. I mean, some pitchers just struggle to find, even if they know what they need to do, they struggle to hold it for, indefinitely. Then, hopefully Reid Detmers has figured it out, and he can just take off from here. That's the hope. Fingers crossed.
That is the hope indeed. You highlighted the last 2 starts, what Detmers has done. But if you go back 2 more before that, last 4 starts for Reid Detmers, a 1.05 ERA, a .78 whip, 34 strikeouts over 25 and 2/3 innings pitched. So seemingly looks like he's back on track. I noticed the same thing with that slider velocity, Scott. You have him at SP 73 in your rankings. I have him at SP 70. I know you update on Tuesday. I'm like Tuesday and Wednesday.
Yeah.
I assume he's going to move up a decent bit. I mean, gaining a little bit more confidence, right? Probably inside the top 60-ish starting pitchers.
Yeah, I would think so. I mean, obviously within that range of the rankings, there's a lot of room to maneuver. So if I could get them pulled up, I can give you a better idea. Let's see here. So getting him in the top 60 would mean moving him past guys like Kodai Senga and Lance Lynn. I think I can make that happen. Look, even you get close to 50 and right outside the top 50 are like Luis Severino and Charlie Morton. Would I feel like I'd take Reid Detmers over them right now. So yeah, I mean, this might be as much as a 25 spot jump in the rankings based on what we've seen from Detmers these past 2 starts, at least for me.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. The range that I was kind of settling on is 52, 53, 54 for starting pitcher is Tyler Wells, Bailey Ober, Taj Bradley. And I think being part of that group, maybe the bottom of that group, right around SP 55, I think that makes sense for Reid Detmers. So probably going to get him up to that range as well. I actually want to highlight the pitcher on the other side of this start. Dylan Cease has allowed 2 earned runs or fewer in 5 straight starts. He was at the Angels. He gave up 1 run over 6 innings pitched, 10 strikeouts to 0 walks. This is only the 2nd time this season that Dylan Cease has had a start with 0 walks. The other one, opening day. It's been quite some time since he's done that. 17 swinging strikes in this start for Dylan Cease. He has 14 or more swinging strikes in each of these past 5 starts. Really, once this slider has taken off once again, has kind of coincided with the swinging strikes and the strikeouts coming back for Dylan Cease. The ratios still look a little bit high, but obviously the strikeouts have gone way up. Again, the swinging strikes as well. He's got a 19% swinging strike rate during these last 5 starts. And he also looks like he's just kind of back on track, Scott. I think inside of the top 20 starting pitchers. And what I wanted to highlight specifically with these 2 guys, I think it's 2 interesting cases of pitchers riding the ship. With Detmers, the underlying numbers, the FIP, the XFIP, all along, they all said that he was pitching better than the surface level stats, that if he keeps pitching that way, he was going to get better. Good things were coming for Reid Detmers. Dylan Cease was different. He was one of those pitchers where we really didn't have any signs that things were going to get better outside of just seeing the talent in years past, right? Like what we saw last year and basically trusting that that would get back on track. But
yeah,
it's something that you said about Manoah earlier this year too, where a light switch could just kind of turn on. We don't know when it's going to happen, but it could happen. And that is what's happened now with Dylan Cease over the last 5 starts.
Yeah, and apparently with Reid Detmers too. So, that is often the way it goes, and that's what makes evaluating players so tricky. I mean, if anybody could do it that well, then they'd make so much money in gambling that they wouldn't have to do anything like this,
right?
Presumably. No, it's tricky, and you have to weigh everything. You have to weigh what you're hearing about the player against the player's track record, against what the data is showing. There's a tendency, and I think it's a reasonable tendency, to lean mostly on like the skill indicators within the data to evaluate players. That is the most objective information we have. But if a player is struggling, a lot of times he's struggling in that regard as well. And it doesn't necessarily mean he can't bounce back from that. Sometimes it just takes that tweaking something to get him back to being the pitcher or hitter that we know him to be. And so a lot of times it just takes faith in the track record, and it just, I mean, sometimes that's all it takes. And sometimes you're going to be wrong about that. Sometimes you're going to be wrong no matter what approach you take, but you have to weigh it all.
Yep. And should have pointed this out with Reid Detmers. He is up to 80% rostered. I assume I think he was around like 70, 75% before this weekend. So obviously some more people adding him for the 2 starts this week. But if Detmers is somehow out there in a shallower league that you play in, a 10-team league, maybe a shallower 12-team points league or something, make sure to go out and add Reid Detmers the way that he's pitching right now. Scott, I know often we don't talk about records in baseball and what's actually happening. And it's kind of interesting because sometimes people will ask me like, oh, what's going on in baseball? And I'm like, actually, I don't know. I just know what's going on in fantasy baseball. Yeah. It's such a weird thing, but the Mets are this is such a crazy story this year. It's the highest payroll in baseball history. They are 6-16 in the month of June. Now 8 games under 500 on the season, 4th place in the NL East, and 8.5 games out of a wild card spot. And it's just, I saw them lose again. Another, late game. They gave up a 2-run homer to Joey Wiemer. They lost the game. And I just started looking into it. I'm like, this is pretty underwhelming. It's crazy, to be honest.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is. And it's getting pretty late. It is getting late on the one hand. On the other hand, we're not quite at the halfway point. We're very close.
Yeah.
We're getting there. By the end of this week, we'll basically be at the halfway point. So there is a lot of season left for them to, how late in the year were they up double digit games on the Braves, first place in the NL East? I think it was as late as June, at some point in June, if I'm remembering correctly. So like there's still time for the standings to shift fairly dramatically. Neither Scherzer nor Verlander has really Scherzer's starting to come around quite a bit, but they haven't looked like themselves for most of the season. And those were two of the Mets' most important players, I would say, two of the biggest reasons they were given such an edge when making preseason predictions. So, if they find their form, then things could change. Things could still change. It's not too late. It's not too late for the Mets. It's not too late for the Phillies, who are 5.5 games ahead of them, of course. Definitely not too late for them. It's not too late for the Padres. There's still enough talent there for one of these teams. I doubt they'll all make a run, but we can't just slot the Marlins in as a wild card right now just because they're currently in position.
Yeah, I mean, also with the Mets, I was looking at their lineup today. It's Lindor and Pete Alonso batting right around 220. That obviously doesn't help. Those are like your 3 and 4 hitters on that team. So hopefully they get back on track. I've got Alonso on my most important team. I've got Lindor in a few spots as well. And I know they've been a little bit underwhelming in terms of the batting average, at least. Let's talk about a few other studs that were on the mound on Monday night. Spencer Strider, 2 strong starts in a row. He was up against the Twins, and he went 7 innings. He allowed 1 run with 10 strikeouts and 26 swinging strikes on 100 pitches, 11 on the slider, 9 on the fastball, 6 on the changeup. He did throw his changeup a little bit more in this start. He basically doubled the usage, and it worked very well. 6 swings on the pitch, 6 whiffs. So every time a hitter swung on his changeup, swang against his changeup, I don't
swung.
I never know which one it is, and then people make fun of me. They're like, "Oh, that's not a word."
Swang.
The changeup worked very well. That is the whole point of what I was trying to say for Spencer Strider. And the other name was Luis Castillo. He struggled a little bit recently with control, but he settled into this start. 7 innings, 3 runs allowed, 2 of those earned, 7 strikeouts with 17 swinging strikes for Luis Castillo. Scott, anything to add with those 2 guys, Strider, Castillo?
I mean, if maybe this changeup is going to be what locks everything into place for Strider and makes him the best pitcher in baseball. It's possible. This was 14% usage in this one. I believe that's his highest yet. 2 starts ago, he had 13.8% usage, so basically 14. But the point is, he's beginning to mix it in more and more. It has about a 50% whiff rate on the season, which is not far behind his slider. Now, a lot of that's the element of surprise. Obviously, he hasn't thrown it much in his career, so hitters see it and they're like, what the heck is that? But like it seems like it's good enough to give him a third look and to keep them to keep him from getting ambushed the way he has at times, both this year and against the Phillies in the postseason last year, to make it so if he doesn't have his peak fastball that day, there's still another option he can turn to. And maybe that'll make him more consistent and be the, one of the clear-cut, true, no questions asked aces in fantasy, because there are fewer and fewer of those, it seems like.
With Luis Castillo, I did just want to point out the ERA 2.87, fantastic. The WHIP 1.06, well over a strikeout per inning. The FIP is at 376. The XFIP is at 370. And a few reasons for that. His BABIP is a little bit low. His strand rate is a little high. Scott, we were talking about trusting the process earlier on with someone like Reid Detmers. The process here would tell you that there will be some regression for Luis Castillo Just throwing it out there. Would you dare try and sell high on him now before that happens?
No. I mean, yeah, the walks have been kind of high recently, and I guess that's probably inflated his season-long rate, which of course doesn't contribute well to the ERA estimators. But let me see. I don't know exactly what the issue is there, because the season-long walk rate isn't actually that high.
No, it's like I mentioned, it's the BABIP is a little bit low. The strand rate is a little bit high. He does allow a good amount of hard contact. So even the xERA was 380 coming into Monday.
Yeah, I'm just not that worried about it. The strikeouts are there. Yeah. I mean, he outperformed his xERA by 32 points last year. That hasn't been a consistent thing, but he's kind of been a different pitcher the last 2 years, going with more four seamers and sliders as opposed to changeups. So I don't know. I think he's fine. I want to worry about it.
And his environment got a lot better, right? Going from Cincinnati to Seattle, it's a completely different park shift, positive one for Luis Castillo. And by the way, I completely agree. I'm not worried at all. I was just kind of playing devil's advocate, looking at some of the underlying numbers, but he's pitched like one of the top 12 starting pitchers in fantasy this year. And I pretty much value him as such at this point. Let's quickly talk about some waiver wire hitters before we hit our first break. Scott, Edouard Julien. He went 2 for 4 on Monday and has hit well since returning from the minors in 14 games since being recalled. Julien is batting .306 with 6 doubles, 1 steal, no homers that time, but obviously the hits and the batting average is racking up there for Edouard Julien. And Jordan Westburg, he made his debut. He started at second base, so perhaps he will gain that eligibility. Had a busy debut, 1 for 4 with a walk, RBI, run scored, and even a caught stealing. I like the fact that he was trying to run. You don't love the fact that he got caught. Who would you rather have between those two, Julien or Westburg?
I think Westburg, just because he doesn't have the obvious platoon issue that Julien does. They tend to bat him leadoff against righties, which helps, but they tend not to play him at all against lefties. And that, of course, limits his opportunities to contribute. He's been pretty productive when he's been in the lineup. Not good enough that it overcomes the playing time issue. We of course don't know how Westburg's going to perform at all. He had some swinging strike issues in the minors that we talked about yesterday. The strikeout rate itself wasn't that bad at AAA, but in terms of the swing and miss specifically, which is less the way you want to strike out than by being overly passive, taking too many pitches. So we'll see. He didn't strike out in his debut. He started at second base. So, hopefully he's trending toward gaining that eligibility at that position, probably third base as well, to go along with shortstop. And so that multi-eligibility for Westburg is going to be nice too. I would take the chance on him performing over the chance of Julien playing more regularly.
Jordan Westburg up to 50% rostered after this weekend. I assume a bunch of leagues had waivers run and fab and all that fun stuff. So he's getting up there, but I think I agree. I would rather have Westburg than Julien. Did you catch any of that game, Scott? The Orioles game?
I did not.
So Jordan Westburg, all of his bros, his boys, they were sitting right behind home plate and they were just obnoxiously chanting for him every time he came up. I think at some point the Reds catcher couldn't hear the pitch comm, and it was because they were so loud. It was crazy. So it was pretty fun environment there for his debut. We will, like we did with Matt McClain, just keep telling everybody, as long as we need to, that you need to add Marcell Ozuna, because he went 1 for 4 with his 16th home run, his third homer in the past 5 games. And basically since the start of May, he's been like a must start player. Marcell Ozuna, he is up to 63% rostered, but obviously still could be out there in some shallower formats. A few names here in 5 outfielder leagues. Got Joey Wiemer, continues a fine month, 1 for 4 with his 11th home run, 422 feet, straightaway center field there in Citi Field. And in June, he's batting .253 with 6 homers, 2 steals, an .889 OPS, and lots of hard contact there for Joey Wiemer. Matt Vierling went 3 for 5 with a double, 2 runs scored. He led off against a left-handed pitcher. And in 12 games since coming back from the IL, Matt Vierling is batting .429 with 3 homers and a .1255 OPS. The last name here is Andy Ibanez. He went 2 for 4 with his 5th home run. I know it's like, this guy's batting .695. Where his OPS is .695. Why are we talking about him? His StatCast numbers are great. Andy Ibanez, 91.2 average exit velocity, 288 xBA, 501 xslug. I don't know if it's real, but those just kind of jumped off the page for me. This deeper leagues, 5 outfielder leagues, got Joey Wiemer, Matt Vierling, and Andy Ibanez. Any interest in that group?
By far, my interest is highest for Joey Wiemer, who, even as underwhelming as he's been for most of the year, he's given you a nice steals total, now a decent home run total. You know, on pace for basically a 2020 season. The batting average is, of course, nothing to get excited about, but hopefully that's changing here with the way he performed in June. You mentioned his exit velocity. Average exit velocity was way up this month, and it is nearly 94 miles per hour, which is great. What's curious about that is he's striking out about 32% of the time, which is not so great. That's closer to how I thought his rookie season would go. Too many strikeouts, but a lot of hard contact. And instead we got kind of the opposite. Like the strikeouts weren't so bad. And so if you told me coming into the year that would be the case for Weaver, he's going to have a great rookie year. But the impact just wasn't there. And he's kind of flipped the script here in June and it's going better. So I don't know if that is something conscious that he did, just, being a little less careful at the plate and swinging a little harder. I don't know. I don't have the backstory for this that would indicate whether or not it's something sustainable, but the talent is there for Wiemer and he's making better use of it. Probably still just a 5 outfielder league option at this point. I wouldn't look to him in 3 outfielder leagues yet, but again, the upside is there. So at least keep an eye on him.
No love for Matt Vierling or Andy Ibanez, huh, Scott?
Well, I not really Ibanez outside of like AL only leagues. Vierling, I think, has a little more potential, but like he's got to play every day. First of all, he's not good enough to overcome a playing time issue and still be useful in fantasy.
All right, fair enough. Let's take our first break, and when we get back, we're going to fire up the Drop-O-Meter here on Fantasy Baseball Today.
Come and get it.
So much new beavis.
So when are you going to put those needles in? Ow, my back.
So much new butthead.
Yeah, baby. Parenthood is cool.
I now pronounce you husband and husband.
This is the happiest day of my life.
So many all new reasons.
Hail, dimwitted earthling.
To stay on the couch.
Let the games begin.
An all new season of Beavis and Butthead now streaming exclusively on Paramount Plus. Use promo code Nachos for 1 month free.
Welcome back to Fantasy Baseball Today, and a quick reminder to follow all of us on Twitter. The Fantasy Baseball Today Twitter account is at FBT Pod. You can follow Scott at CBS Scott White, and you can follow me at Roto_Frank. If you're watching us on YouTube, you can scan the QR code that will take you right to the FBT Twitter account. Let's fire up the Drop-O-Meter here, Scott. And I have mostly hitters, 1 to 10. 1 means that you need to hold this player in all leagues. 10 means you could drop him in all leagues. And first up, we have Rowdy Tellez, who on the season is batting .218 with 12 homers, a .701 OPS. Quality of contact is way down this year. And in the month of June, he's hitting .167 with 0 home runs. Scott, where is Rowdy Tellez on the Drop-O-Meter?
Probably like a 9. Outside of 15-team Roto leagues, which hardly anybody plays in, I just don't see a lot of reason to hold on to him. He has what numbers he has were he pretty much put up in April,
Yeah.
And I'm not ruling out him bouncing back, but I think in most cases there's going to be a better use of that roster spot than waiting for him to bounce back.
Mhm. Yeah, I think I mostly agree. I had him in my home league, which is a 12-team points league. It's slightly deeper rosters. It's more like a roster, roto style roster. But I dropped him there. I think I picked up Jake Berger recently, and yeah, Rowdy Tellez down to 56% rostered, and I'll take that one, Scott. I'll take the L. I was big on Rowdy Tellez this year. Wouldn't surprise me if he gets going at some point, but right now the way he's playing, it's pretty bad. So you can drop Rowdy Tellez. What about Nolan Gorman? We spoke about him a couple of weeks ago when he got off to the slow start in June. We're like, all right, let's see where it goes from here. It really has not gotten better because in the month he's batting 143 with 2 home runs, a 42% strikeout rate, and a 59% fly ball rate. So lots of strikeouts. He's putting the ball in the air, which is going to lead to a lower BABIP and a lower batting average. Nolan Gorman's still 87% rostered, Scott. Where do you have him on the drop-o-meter?
Probably like a 6. I think it's fine in all points leagues because the strikeout rate is such a big hurdle to clear in that format. It puts him in a hole that he needs big production to climb out of. And obviously they tend to be shallower too. So do you have a viable alternative at second base and third base? It's more likely than like in a roto league that you do. You know what? I may go 5. What I think is going to happen with Gorman is I think he's going to get really hot again really soon. I think he is a player of extremes, hits the ball extremely hard, can hit a lot of home runs in a short period of time, but also strikes out a lot. And so that can put him in some extreme depths too, really cold stretches where you hate having him anywhere near your team. And that's what he's going through right now. But this isn't his first time around the block. It's not like, he debuted in April and caught the league by surprise, and now everybody's caught up to him. I don't think that's what happened because he played a lot last year too. I think the talents that led to the production he was delivering earlier are still there, and he's just cold right now. And the strikeouts are piling up, and it hurts. But if you can afford to hold on to him, which again is more likely in a roto league, then I think you should.
It's not likely that Matt McClain is still available, but if he was, would you drop Nolan Gorman for McClain?
Yeah, I think so. My hesitation there is like McClain will cool off to a certain degree. And if we're thinking specifically roto leagues where you're mostly just counting numbers, is what he's going to do in the counting stats? He's going to contribute some steals that Gorman won't contribute. But if Gorman hits 20 home runs from today forward, which is a possibility, finishes the year with 35, it is, even if he hits 240, 230, let's say, is the total that McClain provides going to add up to more than that? And that's hard to say, but I think at this point, with the way McClain has performed, I'd have to make that swap if it really came down to it.
I think so too. McClain is 84% rostered on CBS, but looking at Yahoo, McClain is still 66%. So if you play over there, which is mostly daily head-to-head category leagues, yeah, I would make that swap for dropping Nolan Gorman for Matt McClain.
It's more, I guess the easiest way to put it, rather than the convoluted way I just put it, is that it's more malpractice to leave McClain on the waiver wire than it is to leave Gorman on the waiver wire, So if that's the only way to get McClain off the waiver wire by dropping Gorman, then I think you have to do it. But it wouldn't be my first choice in most cases to like, I'd hope there's someone else I could drop instead.
I do have one pitcher in the mix here on the drop-o-meter. That is Andrew Heaney, who had a rough outing up against the Tigers. 5 2/3 innings, 6 earned runs allowed, 2 homers allowed, Still did have 14 swinging strikes in the start, and his slider velocity was up 1.5 miles per hour. But we're now looking at a 4.38 ERA and a 1.31 WHIP for Andrew Heaney. He's still 83% rostered. Where is he on the drop-o-meter?
10. I'm not expecting to have any confidence in him going forward.
Yeah, I mean, his combination of walks, 3.9 walks per nine, and home runs, 1.6 home runs per nine. That is a very, very dangerous combo. I was going to ask if you'd be willing to drop him for Gavin Williams, Emmett Sheehan, Brian Bayo, Kyle Bradish. And I assume the answer is yes to all of those.
Yep, all the above.
All right, let's talk about Giancarlo Stanton, who is now batting 191 with 6 home runs and a 643 OPS in 30 games this season. He did recently return in the month of June. He's played 17 games where he is batting 121 with a 34% strikeout rate, and apparently is not worried about the boos in Yankee Stadium. 93% rostered.
Oh.
It was a story that came out here locally that they asked him about.
Boos is in BOOS.
Yes, not like him drinking beers in the dugout or something like that. It's the Yankee faithful, the Bronx Bombers. But Stanton is still 93% rostered. Scott, where is he on the drop-o-meter?
Well, I don't think you can drop him in a 5 outfielder league.
Agreed.
But I think in a 3 outfielder league, it's a 10. So what does that average out to? I don't know, maybe like a 7 or an 8,
6, 7.
7.5, let's say. So he's batting under 200 now. That's after over the last 4 months last year. The final 2/3 of last season, Giancarlo Stanton hit 166. So obviously he missed some time with injury during that stretch, but it was a 70-game stretch where he hit 166 to end last season, and now he's batting under 200 again. So I don't know. That's a long time of being nothing short of terrible. He did hit 20 home runs in those 70 games, but that was like all he did. So
yeah,
166 was the batting average.
It's frustrating too, because before he got hurt, he actually got off to a great start this year. He played 13 games. He was batting 269 with 4 homers. He was absolutely crushing the ball. The average exit velocity near 97 miles per hour before he got hurt. But yeah, since he returned, maybe he's not completely healthy or whatever it might be, but yeah, Stanton looks pretty bad.
I mean, it is the tricky part is that like there's still almost nobody in the game who hits the ball harder than he does. So like if it turned around very suddenly and dramatically, I don't think anyone should be surprised by that. But at some point, you got to be willing to make room for somebody else. And I think we're about at that point with Stanton.
Would you drop him for Marcell Ozuna?
Yeah.
I agree.
Yesterday.
What about Seiya Suzuki, who is batting 257 with 6 homers and 1 stolen base, a 742 OPS in the month of June, batting 184, 0 homers, 0 steals, 3 caught stealing. The underlying numbers still look pretty good, though. I mean, that's kind of why I struggle with Seiya Suzuki. He's down to 68% rostered, so some people are already dropping him. Scott, where is he on the drop-o-meter for you?
I was never as high on Suzuki as you and Chris were. And I wasn't as high on Santander either. And then he had a stretch where he homered 5 times in 6 games, right? So I had to get with the program there. But I guess I'll go. It's another situation where I don't see how it's plausible to drop him in a 5 outfielder league, but I would have absolutely no qualms about dropping him in a 3 outfielder league. And in fact, I'd have less qualms about dropping Suzuki than Stanton, even because I don't think Suzuki has the enormous upside that Stanton does. So I'll say a solid 8 for Suzuki on the drop-o-meter.
The only thing for me with him is the plate discipline has been really good. 11% walk rate, 24% strikeout rate. That all seems fine. And he's hitting the ball hard. 92.5 average exit velocity, 50.6% hard hit rate. I don't really know why it's not working for Seiya Suzuki right now, but the things that we normally look at under the hood, they still look pretty good for him. So I don't know. Maybe I did like him a lot coming into the season. Maybe I'm just kind of grasping at straws there, but
Well, they're a lot better than last year. Last year his average exit velocity was 89.6, which is, above average, but not not something that's going to be a major selling point on its own. So he's actually, it may be to some degree kind of a Michael Harris situation, but I don't know. It's over 250 plate appearances he's gotten so far, and it hasn't really added up to much yet. I don't know. I think in 3 outfielder leagues at least you can do better.
I will say this: if you play in a 5 outfielder league, I would try to buy low on Seiya Suzuki, because I think you could probably get him for pretty cheap, especially if it's like a 15 team 5 outfielder league. I think you probably could get a pretty good bargain there on Seiya Suzuki. The last name up here is Anthony Rizzo, who still is batting .270 on the season, but he hurt his neck on a collision with Fernando Tatis back on May 28th. And in 19 games since, he is batting .167 with 0 home runs. Strikeout rate still seems fine during that time. Hitting the ball decently hard, 90.1 average exit velocity. A .216 BABIP seems like he's just been pretty unlucky there for Anthony Rizzo. Scott, where is he on the drop-o-meter?
Well, given the issues that I know a lot of people talk about having at first base, and when I go through my first base rankings, it's like, geez, what do I do after number 7?
Yeah.
I feel like that puts Rizzo at pretty close to a 0.
Mm-hmm.
And like, it's concerning what's going on with his neck, the correlation there with the collision and then the decline in production. You don't like to see that. I want to double check and make sure he wasn't already cold going into that. He was not. He was hitting well. So, hope. I don't know. Maybe he winds up on the IL, in which case you can move him to an IL spot, and that wouldn't be such a bad outcome. But in the long run, I think he's going to be one of the top 10 first basemen. So I would put it at 0.
3 names that I moved ahead of Anthony Rizzo in the rankings last week were Spencer Steer, Justin Turner, and Josh Naylor. I don't think that those names are available in any leagues, but I guess if they were, those are actually moves that I would make, because those guys are just performing really well. They basically have done the opposite with Anthony Rizzo. So
I agree on Steer. I don't agree on the others.
Okay, that's fair. Agree to disagree on Anthony Rizzo. But that's it. Those are all the names that I have on the drop-o-meter. Let's get into the news and notes. Carlos Rodon tossed 4 scoreless innings in a rehab start at AA on Sunday, allowing 1 hit with 4 strikeouts. I think the plan is for him to make 1 more rehab start and then join the Yankees after that. So he might actually get a start in before the All-Star break, early-ish July there on Carlos Rodon. Julio Arias completed 4 innings in a rehab start at Single A Sunday. He is expected to return to the Dodgers this Friday in Kansas City. Max Fried was scheduled to throw another bullpen session Monday. I did not look it up to see if there was any update on how that went, but he has responded well so far to mound work and could soon advance to facing live hitters. Again, that is Max Fried. The Marlins activated both Jazz Chisholm and Gene Segura from the IL. Garrett Hampson and Jacob Amaya were optioned back to AAA. AJ Smith-Shawver was optioned back to AAA Monday as well, and it sounds like Michael Soroka is likely to rejoin the Braves rotation when they do need someone to start for the team. And in 3 starts since Soroka got sent back to the minors, a 1.42 ERA, a .79 WHIP, nearly a strikeout per inning. Scott, any interest in Soroka in deeper leagues in the meantime?
Well, he's definitely looked better since getting sent back down. So I forget how many starts it was. However many starts he made prior to his promotion, he had a 9% swinging strike rate. And the 3 since he got sent back to AAA, he's at a 14% swinging strike rate. And in his latest start, it was a 1-hitter over 7 innings. I believe he took a no-hitter right up to the very last out and then gave up a solo home run. He had 18 swinging strikes in that start, including 11 on the fastball, which is not his MO. But his MO was like get a ton of ground balls on the sinker. So he's changed his pitch mix And the fastball, the four-seam fastball seems to be playing up. It seems to actually be getting whiffs. Interestingly, in that near no-hitter, he had, I believe, 9 fly balls versus 4 ground balls. So that's very uncharacteristic. And so, like, yes, he's looked a lot better in AAA. I still have no idea who Michael Soroka is now, because this seems like a completely different profile. If he can be like a bat misser, that may be even better. But I'm going to be pretty skeptical until I see him string together a few good starts in the majors. So I'm not saying you can't pick him up, but most of those guys we talked about yesterday, the Griffin Cannings of the world, I'd go for them instead.
All right. Eduardo Rodriguez will make a rehab start on Thursday at AAA. He's been out since late May with an injury to his left index finger. Riley Green is close to beginning a rehab assignment. He's missed all of June with a stress fracture in his left fibula. Chris Bryant is scheduled to begin a rehab assignment Wednesday at AAA. He's been on the IL since late May with a left heel bruise. Alex Cobb is expected to return from the IL during this week's road trip. CJ Cron was reinstated from the IL, and he's been out since May 15th due to back spasms. This one came out of nowhere. We had no updates on CJ Cron doing a rehab assignment, really doing much of anything, and they activated him. All right.
Yeah. You going to drop Rizzo for him, Frank?
I don't think so, but that's probably the right range, like 13, 14, 15 in the first base ranking, somewhere around there. What about you?
So I guess I'm forgetting his name now. Nolan Jones. I guess Nolan Jones has to find his at-bats somewhere other than first base now, which he pretty much had been. He'd mostly been playing right field, and with Elegiras Montero playing first base. So I don't think anybody's going to miss Montero too much. Yeah, I don't think this impacts anybody adversely in the Rockies lineup.
Please. Nolan Jones has been
I don't
pretty
think
good.
So. I think Jones is going to be fine.
All right. Jorge Polanco has started light baseball activities. He's been out since early June with a moderate left hamstring strain. That's the second strain on that same hamstring this season. Matthew Boyd was removed from his start Monday due to left elbow discomfort, which, obviously you never like to hear it. Tarek Skubal will make his next rehab start at AAA on Wednesday. That will be his 5th and likely last rehab outing, 57% rostered if you want to go out and stash Tarek Skubal.
And that's a more exciting stash than Michael Soroka, I would say, as well.
Yeah, yep, agreed there. Trevor Rogers, who has a partial tear in his right non-throwing lat, hopes to have better clarity on his timeline after the All-Star break. So he'll be out at least until then. Adrian Hauser will return to the Brewers starting rotation Thursday against the Mets. And it sounds like they're going with a 6-man rotation as they don't have any days off leading into the All-Star break. Matt Manning will return to the Tigers rotation Tuesday against the Rangers. And I assume we don't have any interest for fantasy, Scott.
No, I have wondered, though, with Matt Manning coming back and Tarek Skubal soon to come back, is Reese Olson long for this world? As much as we like him, would he be the odd man out? They also have Joey Wentz, who could be
gone.
I mean, he's had a few good starts.
He has.
I'd prefer that. Don't get me wrong. I just don't know what the Tigers are going to do.
Yeah. I guess another spot could open up if Matthew Boyd goes in the IL, right? With this
that's true. Yeah.
Left elbow discomfort. A few prospect updates we haven't mentioned recently. Drew Jones, who was the Diamondbacks' first-round pick from last year, is not expected to return to minor league game action until at least the middle of July after suffering a right hamstring strain while running the bases last week. He's only played 14 games this season due to multiple injuries, and frankly, it's been a pretty disastrous first year in the minors for Drew Jones. The Reds promoted pitching prospect Connor Phillips from AA to AAA. He has a ridiculous 111 strikeouts over 64 2/3 innings, but that is the level where they are using pre-tacked baseballs in the minors. But he's just a name that should be on radars, right, Scott? Because I feel like there's a chance we could see Connor Phillips in the second half of the season.
Yeah, there is. there are some similarities to Andrew Abbott here because it is the Southern League. It's not all of AA for what it's worth. It's the Southern League specifically with the pre-tack baseballs, and we saw Andrew Abbott's strikeout rate go from absurd at that level to still very good at AAA, but it wasn't the same, and his overall success wasn't the same. And at the major league level, it hasn't been the same either. Phillips has a more conventional power profile, but what I've noticed with him, and this is Connor Phillips, by the way, what I've noticed with him is for all those strikeouts he's getting at AA, he has a 1.31 whip. He's given up a lot of hits. He's given up a lot of home runs. He's given up a lot of walks. So I don't know. He does have a ton of strikeouts, and that is the most important thing, but it's not everything. So let's see how AAA goes.
All right. A few other minor league prospect promotions. The Tigers promoted third base prospect Colt Keith from AA to AAA. He was batting .325 with 14 homers and a .976 OPS. The Red Sox promoted outfield prospect Cedane Rafaela from AA to AAA. He was batting .294 with 6 homers and 30 steals this season in the minors. Let's take our final break, and when we return, I've got some leftovers. I've got Team Name Tuesday. I even have a Fantasy Justice for All question from somebody in the Scott White Dynasty League.
Uh-oh.
It's not actually it's not about our league, though, Scott.
Oh, okay.
It's about another league, but we'll get to all that right after this.
Absolutely magisterial here.
Welcome back, and a big thanks to everyone watching us live on YouTube. We do appreciate you hanging out. It's obviously pretty late here, but almost 500 people still here hanging. So we do appreciate it. Like this video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Some pitching leftovers. Scott, Justin Verlander labored his way through 5 innings up against the Brewers. He did not allow a run, which was the good news. 5 hits, 2 walks, 5 strikeouts, only 7 swinging strikes on 100 pitches. So I don't know. Still kind of a mixed bag here for Justin Verlander. Sonny Gray had a quality start at the Atlanta Braves. 6 2/3, 3 runs allowed with 5 strikeouts and 12 swinging strikes. Allowed a good amount of hard contact. But there were some interesting things here for Sonny Gray. Velocity was up on the cutter and the sweeper, and he nearly doubled his sweeper usage in this start. And it's been far and away his best pitch this season. So I wonder if this is something that can, help Sonny Gray get back on track. But anything you'd like to add on those two, Gray and Verlander?
Well, it was Sonny Gray's first start of 6 innings in his last 4 chances. And in fact, it was only his 3rd start of 6+ innings in his last 10 chances. So that has been as much his issue as anything else. The walks have been high. The walks have been high, so that's probably helped with. That's probably contributed, I should say, to the inefficiency. This was a step in the right direction. I agree, and how much the pitch selection has to do with that, I think remains to be seen. But generally speaking, I'm always for pitchers throwing their best swing and miss pitches more.
All right. I don't really think this matters very much, but Colin Ray turned in a quality start at the Mets. Scott, does this matter at all?
No, not really.
Yeah.
Hard to get excited about Colin Ray.
Yeah, it's a 4.57 ERA and a 1.22 WHIP, so not really much there. Some hitting leftovers. Michael Harris went 3 for 3 with 2 more hard hits, and it was his 7th multi-hit game in the month of June, where he is now batting .373 with 4 homers, 3 steals, and a 10.05 OPS. Scott, you look confused. Did I just make up a stat? I don't know.
I thought he had 3 hard hits.
He might have. Maybe.
Let me double check.
Maybe I missed an at bat.
It's not really worth stopping the show for. No, you're right. He has 2 hard hits.
Because sometimes I write stuff down while the game is still going, and then another at bat happens, and I'm like, crap, I missed this.
The one that's not a hard hit had an expected batting average of .570, so I got confused there. My mistake.
Ronald Acuna, the best slap hitter around, went 1 for 3 with his 17th home run. He's also batting .328 with a .971 OPS and 35 steals this season. Spencer Steer went 3 for 3 with his 12th home run. The batting average has slowed down a bit in the month of June, but he still has 4 homers and 7 steals this month, which is, who knew Spencer Steer was a speedster, but here we are. He's playing very well. Shohei Ohtani went 1 for 3 with a sock and a shoe. His league-leading 26th home run, also up to 11 steals. The home run, 113 miles per hour exit velocity, 446 feet off of Dylan Cease. Luis Robert went 2 for 4 with his 22nd home run, and 17 of those have come since the start of May. So kind of a slow April there, but since May started, Luis Robert has been great for fantasy.
Batting over 300 as well during that stretch.
Yep. I think the OPS is over 900 too during that time. So he's just been great. Julio Rodriguez went 3 for 4 with his 18th steal. The batting average slowly creeping up, still a letdown for where you drafted him, but the power and speed, I think he's still on pace for like a 30-30 season. So that part has been good for Julio Rodriguez. All right, Scott, let's do a little fantasy justice for all, which if people who haven't heard it before, we actually haven't done this since probably last season, I think. If you have a dispute in your league, it's not, hey, should I trade for this guy? Or it's like somebody doing something fishy in your league and it requires
drama.
justice. Yeah, drama. Then we will try to help you out for the Fantasy Baseball Today OGs out there. This is the equivalent to Adam Mazur's Regulator segment back in the day. Feel free to email us at fantasybaseball@cbsi.com. That's the letter I, and put fantasy justice in the subject line. This is from Brian Flood, who plays in the Scott White Dynasty League with us. And he writes in, hey guys, I love the pod. I wrote about fantasy at CBS in 2005 and 2006 before podcasts were invented.
That's true. In fact,
Nice.
I was hired to fill Brian Flood's vacancy. He was my predecessor.
Oh, you learn something new every day. I honestly had no idea. Here's what he's got. Anyway, unique situation here and would love everyone's feedback. I'm in an old school AL only Roto keeper league. It's the kind of league where you don't have a bench aside from the IL and minor league guys. Back in 2020, the Ohtani owner found Brendan McKay and selected him in the minor league draft because he was eligible at both pitcher and as a utility hitter. The Ohtani owner then activated McKay, even though he wasn't active on an MLB roster, which is legal in their league, and he moved Ohtani and McKay back and forth from pitcher to utility, depending on Ohtani's pitching schedule. The Ohtani owner has now kept McKay for 3 years, doing this swap to get both Ohtani's hitting and pitching stats. It was savvy at first, and I give the owner credit. However, McKay isn't a hitter anymore. His last MLB at bat was in 2019, and he gave up hitting in 2021. But CBS continues to give McKay eligibility at utility. Is this savvy, shady, enough already after 3 years? And why is McKay still eligible at utility?
Hey, I resent this because he's kind of...
I thought about it too. I'm like, yeah, he is kind of, talking crap about whatever.
Yeah. So I am primarily responsible for the players having the eligibility they do up to a certain point. I have the say on their primary eligibility, and of course, what eligibility they pick up or lose based on games played really depends on your league setup. And I haven't known what to do about McKay because it's just like he and Ohtani are the only players in the entire history of the CBS database who've had both pitcher and hitter eligibility simultaneously. And I haven't put a ton of thought into it because I didn't think the repercussions, like McKay hasn't been a fantasy significant player in a very long time. So I didn't think it mattered that much, but now I have reason to think it matters. At least in this one league, for this one savvy owner, it does matter. So next year, I will go over McKay's games played, what roles he's filled, and see if he deserves to have that dual eligibility still, and hopefully put a stop to that so that your league doesn't have to come up with a solution on its own. But it is a very clever thing. Like I think leagues without bench spots are dumb. So
that's fair.
That's part of the problem. Just, give give your league bench spots so that he can take advantage of Ohtani without having to rely on Brendan McKay. But yeah, it's obviously a weird scenario that's not going to apply to hardly anyone else listening.
Right.
But I do give that guy credit. That's clever.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty funny. To answer all three questions, I would say all of the above. Yes, it was savvy, kind of shady, and enough already after 3 years. I would say it kind of fits all three of those.
Well, it'd be different if McKay was still doing both in the minors, but
yeah,
no, he probably needs to lose one eligibility, I guess, as a hitter.
I could tell you for certain, I haven't looked up Brendan McKay in a couple of years, and I just found out that he had Tommy John surgery in September of last year. So who even knows when we'll see Brendan McKay?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's the thing too. So he hasn't even played this year.
No.
But yeah, no, he hasn't been. Okay, so in 2022, he was basically done as a hitter. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, Brendan McKay. We devoted enough time to Brendan McKay.
We sure have. And Brian Flood, I would say that justice has been served. The call to the bullpen. We only have 2 updates for the Braves. Basically, everybody in their bullpen was unavailable, so Kirby Yates picked up his first save of the season. And for the Brewers, Devin Williams fired a clean 9th inning for his 14th save of the year. To stream or not to stream, we'll start with Tuesday. And I did eliminate someone, Garrett Whitlock, because he's now up to 79% rostered. But of the other names available, I think Gavin Williams at Kansas City is good. Brian Wu versus the Nationals is fine. Julio Teheran at the Mets, probably okay.
Yeah, I'm fine with all of those. They were all 3 among my 10 sleeper pitchers for the week, not doing this day-by-day streaming thing. But I still approve in the day-by-day streaming thing.
All right. On Wednesday, not as many interesting options, but I know Logan Allen hasn't been great recently with Cleveland. At Kansas City, I think is fine. Wade Miley has pitched well since coming back. Actually, there are some pretty good options here. I made that up. Wade Miley at the Mets is good. Dane Dunning versus the Tigers. Logan Allen at Kansas City. And frankly, I think either pitcher in the Yankees and A's game is fine too. JP Sears and Domingo Germán. I know Germán's been bad, but like, whatever. It's in Oakland, so.
Thinking about the McKay dilemma again.
It's not that serious, Scott.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, there may be some complications that we didn't bring up in terms of getting him down to just pitcher eligible, but I'll look into it. Anyway. Okay. So Wednesday streamers. Yeah, I think Logan Allen's my first choice here, followed by Dane Dunning and Domingo Germán. Are those the same names you said?
I said those, but I also think Wade Miley. You said Miley, right?
No, I didn't.
No, Wade Miley at the Mets is okay, and I think JP Sears is fine against the Yankees too.
Yeah, it's pretty good options both days. What do you know?
Wow. We got Scott to like 2 days worth of streamers. What is happening? Will he like the team names on Team Name Tuesday? I don't know about that.
Is Domingo Germán too scary just because of the way his last 2 starts went? I know he's facing Oakland, but given the alternatives, I guess Domingo Germán should be a lower priority.
Yeah, I would say he's probably like 4th or 5th on that list, but it is a big ballpark. He struggled with home runs. Probably could get away with a few more fly balls out there in Oakland, so I think it's fine.
Okay.
All right, Team Name Tuesday, and we will start off with this first one from Andrea, and Teoscar goes 2. That's the team name.
Oh, I get it. Okay.
And Teoscar goes 2. From Jess, you say Kikuchi, I say a Suzuki.
That is a rare occasion where 2 names are better than 1.
This one's from Nick, and it is a song which I will try to sing, even though Scott does not like my singing. Take a Leody off Manny. I probably didn't do a good job of it, but
I don't know that song.
Take a load off Manny.
Don't know it.
The classic song, The Weight by the band. From Felix, do you smell what the Brock is cooking?
All right. Another 2-namer.
I was like, yeah, it's, I think Brock Burke was the one that he said he wanted that to represent. So, all right. From Bob, Ohtani Boom.
It would work better if his name was pronounced Bomb,
Yeah,
but it's not. But still, I think it's decent.
that's pretty good. From Colin, 877 Glass Now.
JG Wentworth,
Yeah.
877 cash now. Yes.
And this next one I have to be very careful with. Wu-Tang Clan ain't nothing to puck with.
Okay.
Be very careful. From
Yep.
Robert, he's not a carpenter yet, just a nailer.
Okay. Yeah, I don't mind that.
All right.
I haven't hated any yet.
That's good. From Mateo, all along the watchtowers.
Not sure I get the reference.
That's a Jimi Hendrix song.
And
All
it's the
along-
Towers.
all along
Is
the
he naming the
watchtower.
team after Chris Towers? Is that the Towers?
Oh, you are going to notice a little bit of a theme here. And
Okay.
the next one is Scots in White Satin. I think this is supposed to be Knights in White Satin, written by
Okay.
Scott Bradley. Next
All
one
right.
is Welsh Shiver Me Timbers for Welsh.
I don't know any of these references, so they're lost on me. But I thank you for using our names.
And the last one is Frankly, I won't Stampfl this.
Okay.
They're fine. From Steven, Blackman Turner Overdrive.
Okay. Yeah.
McClana hand it to you.
Mm-hmm.
Have it Yuri way. Burger King.
I mean, okay. Yeah. I mean, I presume he's thinking about Jake Berger. He's thinking about Michael King. So he's got 3 names in here. Yeah, I guess that's fine.
Bybee or not Bybee. Bybee
Okay.
or not Bybee.
Mhm.
This one, it's like trying to figure out how to say it correctly. Encarnacionaval Cruz. Encarnacionaval.
And he spelled Cruz, Cruz. Okay.
Yeah.
It's a stretch.
Okay.
It's a stretch with Encarnacion's name there, turning in that into Carnival.
Mhm.
But
Oh, there you go. Yeah, I see what's happening here. Carnival Cruise. I've actually I've never been on one of those, like a vacation cruise type thing. Have you?
yeah, not Carnival. And only once.
Yeah.
But I
Well,
liked it.
Free advertising here at the 102 mark on the podcast. Taj Mahal Hall.
Okay.
Yeah, let's just move on from that one. Minnesota Olsen Twins.
All right.
I do like this last one. You're so Vaughn. You probably think this Senga's about you.
You spelled YU. I don't know why the first U wasn't spelled YU. Why just the second U?
I don't know.
I don't know.
I can always respond and ask, Scott, if you really want to know.
Yeah.
But I enjoyed that one.
Okay.
right.
That's what matters.
I feel like for the most part, Scott liked them.
I
second half there.
the only one I think that there. How many made me groan today?
I would say all of the ones that probably feature our names, you probably weren't too big on.
I just didn't get the references. That was
yeah. I think the Burger King one kind of made you groan a little bit.
yeah. Wow. That's okay.
All right, we're going to wrap there. For Scott, I am Frank. Thanks as always for tuning in to Fantasy Baseball today. Please make sure to follow and leave a 5-star rating on Apple or Spotify. We'll be back again tomorrow. Bye-bye.